Barcelona, 1980s. A city shaking off the dust of dictatorship, embracing a new, vibrant, and chaotic freedom. The streets are alive with color, music, and a sense of endless possibility. But beneath this glittering surface, a different kind of energy is building. This is the story of a heist so audacious, so perfectly timed, it would become a legend in the city's criminal underworld. A story that begins and ends on the most famous street in Barcelona, Las Ramblas. In the early 1980s, Barcelona was a playground for a new generation. The movida madrilena, the cultural counter-revolution, had spilled over into Catalonia. The air was thick with optimism, but also with opportunity for those willing to bend the rules. The city's rapid transformation created gaps, blind spots that were ripe for exploitation, while tourists and locals strolled down Las Ramblas, enjoying the flower stalls and street performers. A small, tight-knit group of individuals was meticulously planning something that would shatter the city's festive illusion. He assembled a team not of muscle, but of specialists. There was the driver, a wheelman who knew Barcelona's labyrinthine streets like the back of his hand. There was the mechanic, who understood the inner workings of the candy vans better than the company's own technicians. And there was the muscle, disciplined and cool-headed, chosen for their nerve, not just their strength. For months, they conducted surveillance. They didn't just watch the vans. They studied them. They documented routes, timed traffic lights, noted driver shift changes, and even learned the subtle behavioral tics of the guards. They discovered a crucial vulnerability. On its route, one particular van had to navigate the impossibly crowded and narrow streets just off Los. Here, the van was forced to slow to a crawl, becoming a sitting duck for a few precious seconds. This was their window. The location was perfect, chaotic enough to provide cover, yet with planned escape routes that only a local would know. The plan was a symphony of precision. It involved multiple vehicles, disguises, and a timeline calculated down to the second. The first step was acquisition. The crew obtained a vehicle identical to those used by a major utility company, a disguise that would allow them to park and work on a busy street without arousing suspicion. They set up a fake roadwork scene, complete with cones and signs, right at the choke point they had identified. To any passerby, it was just another day of endless city maintenance. The day of the heist arrived. The city was buzzing, the summer sun beating down on the Ramblas. The crew moved into position, their hearts pounding, but their minds clear. They wore the utility company uniforms, their tools of the trade laid out. As the armored van approached their staged roadwork, it slowed down exactly as they predicted. In that moment, the plan exploded into action. The crew's van boxed in the armored truck. Before the guards could even register what was happening, the crew was upon them. But this wasn't a Hollywood shootout. The goal was speed and surprise, not violence. One member, using a specialized key they had managed to fabricate, worked on the van's lock, a feat that should have been impossible. Another created a diversion, drawing the attention of the few onlookers. Within 90 seconds less time than it takes to wait for a traffic light they were in, bags filled with millions of pesetas were transferred from the armored truck to their getaway vehicle. It was a silent, professional, and terrifyingly efficient operation. The guards were neutralized without serious injury, left stunned by the sheer speed of the assault. And then, as quickly as they had appeared, they vanished. But their escape was the true masterpiece. They didn't speed away in a single car. Instead, they drove a few blocks to a prearranged spot, an underground parking garage. There, they abandoned the first vehicle, switched to a clean, unremarkable sedan, changed their clothes, and simply melted back into the city. They walked out of the garage and disappeared into the crowds of Barcelona, looking like ordinary citizens, their pockets metaphorically bulging with a fortune. When the police arrived, they found a scene of utter confusion. The abandoned armored van, the bewildered guards, and a handful of witnesses who could offer only vague, contradictory descriptions. The fake roadwork was so convincing that the first officers on the scene initially thought it was a legitimate municipal project gone wrong. The investigation hit a wall almost immediately. The crew had left no fingerprints, no discarded weapons, no trail. They had executed the perfect crime. The media went into a frenzy. Headlines screamed about the ghosts of the Ramblas. The audacity of the robbery, carried out in broad daylight on the city's busiest thoroughfare, captured the public's imagination. In the gritty bars of the Raval and the working-class neighborhoods of Barcelona, the thieves became folk heroes. They were seen not as dangerous criminals, but as clever rebels who had outsmarted the system, taking from a faceless corporation without spilling a drop of blood. But living with a secret of that magnitude takes its toll. The crew had the money, but they couldn't spend it. Any lavish purchase would draw unwanted attention. They were forced to live their old lives, sitting on a fortune they couldn't enjoy. The trust that had bound them together during the planning began to fray under the pressure of paranoia. Whispers and rumors started to circulate in the underworld. Who had the money? Was someone going to talk? The police, led by a determined and old-school inspector, refused to give up. They had no physical evidence, so they turned to the human element. They started working their informants, leaning on small-time crooks, patiently listening to the city's whispers. They knew a score this big couldn't stay secret forever. Someone would eventually make a mistake, and someone did. It wasn't a boast in a bar or a flashy new car. It was a small, almost insignificant detailer. Disgruntled associate, feeling he'd been shortchanged his cut, who let a name slip to the wrong person. It was the single thread the police needed to start unraveling the entire operation. One by one, through relentless surveillance and pressure, the investigators began to connect the dots, linking the members of the crew to each other. The final act didn't play out in a dramatic raid, but in a series of quiet, calculated arrests. The members of the crew were picked up, one by one, often at their homes or regular jobs, much to the shock of their families and neighbors. The myth of the ghost-like supercriminals was shattered, revealing them to be ordinary men who had attempted something extraordinary. The trial was a sensation, but the outcome was a foregone conclusion. The evidence, once pieced together, was overwhelming. The folk heroes were unmasked and sent to prison. But what about the money? To this day, the vast majority of the stolen millions has never been recovered. It's believed to be hidden away, perhaps buried somewhere in the Catalan countryside, or laundered so expertly that it simply dissolved back into the economy, its criminal origins erased. The Las Ramblas Heist is more than just a crime story. It's a snapshot of a city in transition, a tale of audacity, meticulous planning, and human error, set against the vibrant backdrop of post-Franco Barcelona. It reminds us that beneath the surface of any city, there are stories unfolding that are far more complex and dramatic than we can imagine. The legend lives on, a whisper in the narrow alleys of the Gothic Quarter. A testament to the day a handful of men brought Barcelona's most famous street to a standstill and walked away with a fortune. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into one of history's most fascinating heists, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. Let us know in the comments what other legendary crimes you'd like us to explore. Until next time.